6 months after the Liberty's victory, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the USS Constitution. It was the most advanced warship humanity had ever built, equipped with quantum resonance arrays and the latest technology. But Jake often found himself missing his old ship. The war against the Zenthari Empire was almost over. Human fleets had liberated dozens of worlds and pushed the enemy back to their home systems. The galaxy looked completely different now than it had a year ago. "Admiral," said Commander Kelly Davis, his new second-in-command, "we're receiving reports from the front lines. The Zenthari have surrendered 3 more star systems. They're retreating faster than we can advance." Jake nodded as he studied the tactical displays. Red areas that had once shown Zenthari territory were turning blue as human forces reclaimed world after world. The quantum resonance weapons had made all the difference. Zenthari shields were now completely useless, and their technological advantage had disappeared overnight. "Any word from the peace negotiations?" Jake asked. "The Zenthari Council is asking for a meeting," Kelly replied. "They want to discuss surrender terms." Jake felt a mix of satisfaction and sadness. The war that had seemed hopeless was finally ending, but it had cost so much. Millions of people had died over the past 20 years. Entire worlds had been destroyed. Even victory couldn't bring back all the lives that had been lost. His personal communicator beeped, and Jake saw a familiar name on the screen. Pete Collins was calling from Earth, where he was now working as head of weapons development for the entire human fleet. "Hello, Pete," Jake said when he answered the call. Pete's face appeared on the small screen, looking older but happier than Jake had seen him in years. "Jake, I just wanted to give you the latest numbers. We now have 800 ships equipped with quantum resonance arrays. The Zenthari can't match that kind of firepower." 800, Jake repeated. "Hard to believe it all started with your crazy experiment on the Liberty," Pete laughed. "Crazy is right. I still can't believe we survived that first test firing. The power readings were off the charts. We could have blown ourselves up." Jake thought about that day 6 months ago when they had faced 3 Zenthari destroyers with an untested weapon. It seemed like a lifetime ago, but it had only been the beginning of humanity's comeback. "Pete, I have some news," Jake said. "The government is planning something special for the Liberty. They want to turn her into a memorial and museum. She'll be permanently docked at Earth Station 1 where everyone can visit her." Pete's expression grew serious. "She deserves that honor. That old ship saved the human race." After the call ended, Jake walked to his ready room and pulled up the files about the Liberty's final mission. The old ship was currently on her way back to Earth, carrying the rescued scientists from Research Station Delta 7 and a full report of everything that had happened. Dr. Carlos Martinez had become something of a hero himself. His research into Zenthari shield technology had provided the final piece of the puzzle that made Pete's weapon possible. The scientific community was calling it the most important discovery of the war, but Jake knew the real heroes were the crew, members who had risked everything on a forgotten ship in the Outer Rim. People like Lisa Harper, who had led the dangerous rescue mission, Ryan Blake, who had fired the weapons that brought down the first Zenthari ships to fall to human forces, Amy Rodriguez, who had detected the distress signal that started everything, and, of course, Pete Collins, whose brilliant engineering had turned an old patrol ship into the weapon that ended the war. Jake's thoughts were interrupted by an urgent message from Fleet Command. The Zenthari Empire had officially requested a ceasefire. They wanted to begin formal peace negotiations immediately. The message was brief, but historic. After 20 years of war, the Zenthari were ready to surrender. Their empire was collapsing as more and more worlds joined the human alliance. The quantum resonance weapons had not only defeated their military forces, but had also inspired dozens of other alien species to rebel against Zenthari rule. Jake called an immediate meeting with his senior staff. When they gathered in the conference room, he shared the news about the ceasefire request. "This is it," he told them. "The war is effectively over. The Zenthari know they can't win anymore. Commander Davis looked at the latest intelligence reports. Our scouts are reporting that Zenthari fleets are withdrawing from their outer territories. They're consolidating around their home worlds. What are the terms they're offering? Asked the ship's tactical officer. Jake pulled up the diplomatic files. Complete withdrawal from all conquered territories, reparations for damaged worlds, and most importantly, they're offering to share their advanced technology with the species they conquered. It was more than anyone had hoped for. The Zenthari were not just surrendering, they were trying to make up for decades of destruction and conquest. 3 weeks later, Jake stood in the observation deck of Earth Station 1, watching as the USS Liberty approached for the final time. The old ship looked small compared to the massive space station, but she was receiving the honor guard usually reserved for the most important vessels in the fleet. Ships from dozens of worlds had come to witness the Liberty's arrival. News reporters from across human space were broadcasting the event live. The warship that everyone had ignored was now the most famous ship in the galaxy. As the Liberty docked, Jake saw Pete Collins walking through the airlock. Behind him came Lisa Harper, Ryan Blake, Amy Rodriguez, and the rest of the crew that had changed history. They all looked tired but proud. Pete walked up to Jake and saluted. "The USS Liberty reporting for final duty, Admiral." Jake returned the salute, then shook Pete's hand. "The Liberty's duty is complete, old friend. She's earned her rest." The formal ceremony took place in the station's main assembly hall. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, along with the rescued scientists from Delta 7 and the highest officials in human government. When Jake was asked to speak, he kept his words simple. The Liberty proved that it's not the size of your ship or the power of your weapons that matters most. It's the courage of your crew and the willingness to try something new when everyone else says it's impossible. The USS Liberty was officially decommissioned and converted into a museum that same day. Visitors would be able to walk through her corridors, see Pete's quantum resonance array, and learn about the crew that had saved the galaxy. But for Jake, the most important moment came when he stood alone on the Liberty's bridge one last time. The old ship was quiet now, her mission complete. She had been forgotten and ignored for years, then became the most important vessel in human space. As Jake turned off the bridge lights and sealed the door, he smiled. Sometimes the best weapons were the ones nobody expected. 2 weeks passed like a storm on the USS Liberty. Chief Engineer Pete Collins worked day and night on his quantum resonance weapon. He barely slept or ate. The data from Research Station Delta 7 had given him everything he needed. But building the weapon was still incredibly difficult. Captain Jake Morrison visited Engineering Deck 5 every day to check on Pete's progress. The machine was getting bigger and more complex. Thick cables ran from it to the ship's main power systems. New control panels covered the walls. The whole room hummed with energy. "How much longer?" Jake asked during one of his visits. Pete wiped sweat from his forehead. "Almost done, Captain. Maybe 2 more days. But I have to warn you again. When we test this thing, it might blow up the whole ship. The power requirements are enormous." Jake looked at the weapon Pete had built. It looked dangerous, like something that could destroy them all, but it might also be their only hope of fighting back against the Zenthari Empire. "Have you told the crew what you're really building?" Jake asked. Pete shook his head. "They think I'm upgrading our old weapons systems. I haven't told them we're building something completely new and untested." Jake made a decision. "When you're ready to test it, I want the whole crew to know what we're doing. They deserve to understand the risks." 3 days later, Pete called Jake down to engineering. The quantum resonance weapon was finally complete. It looked like a huge metal box covered in blinking lights and control screens. Thick power cables connected it to the ship's reactor. "She's ready for testing," Pete said proudly. "But Captain, we need a target. We can't test this weapon without something to shoot at." Jake had been thinking about that problem for days. They needed to test the weapon against real Zenthari shields, not just simulations. That meant finding Zenthari ships and fighting them. It was dangerous, but it was the only way to know if Pete's weapon really worked. "I've been monitoring Zenthari patrol routes," Jake said. "There's a small group of 3 destroyers that passes through the Kepler system every week. They'll be there in 2 days. Pete looked nervous. 3 destroyers? Captain, that's a lot of firepower. If our weapon doesn't work, they'll destroy us easily. If our weapon does work, Jake said, we'll destroy them instead. Jake called a meeting with all the senior officers. He gathered them in the main conference room and told them the truth about Pete's project. When he finished explaining, the room was completely silent. Lisa Harper was the first to speak. "Captain, are you telling us that we're going to attack 3 Zenthari destroyers with an untested weapon that might blow up our own ship?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you," Jake said. Ryan Blake, the tactical officer, leaned back in his chair. "Sir, the Zenthari have never lost a ship in single combat against humans. Their technology is too advanced. Even if our new weapon works perfectly, we're still outnumbered 3-1. Dr. Susan Wells looked worried. "What about the crew? Do they know how dangerous this is?" Jake shook his head. "Not yet. But I'm going to tell them before we go into battle. Everyone deserves to know what we're risking." Amy Rodriguez had been quiet during the meeting, but now she spoke up. "Captain, I've been studying the data from Delta 7. The scientists were right about Zenthari shield frequencies. If Pete's weapon is calibrated correctly, it should go right through their defenses." "Should," Ryan said, "but we don't know for B." "Sure." Jake stood up and looked at each of his officers. "I'm not going to order anyone to do this. If you want to transfer off the Liberty before we attempt this mission, I'll understand. But I believe this is our best chance to help win the war." One by one, each officer said they would stay. Nobody wanted to transfer off the ship. They were all willing to risk everything for a chance to strike back at the Zenthari. The next day, Jake announced the mission to the entire crew over the ship's communication system. He explained about Pete's weapon and the plan to attack the Zenthari patrol. He told them honestly that they might all die. When Jake finished his announcement, he expected some crew members to ask for transfers. But nobody did. The crew of the Liberty had been forgotten and ignored for years. Now they had a chance to prove that their old ship still mattered. Pete spent the final day running tests on his quantum resonance weapon. Everything looked good on paper, but he wouldn't know for sure until they fired it in combat. The weapon drew so much power that it made the lights flicker throughout the ship when he tested it. "The targeting system is connected to our main guns," Pete explained to Ryan Blake. "When you lock onto a target and fire, the quantum resonance array will fire at the same time. If everything works right, their shields will collapse just before our regular weapons hit them." Ryan nodded, but he still looked nervous. "What if their shields don't collapse?" "Then we're in trouble," Pete said honestly. The Liberty arrived in the Kepler system right on schedule. Jake ordered the ship to hide behind a large asteroid where the Zenthari patrol wouldn't see them coming. They waited for 3 hours before Amy detected the enemy ships approaching. 3 destroyers, just like intelligence predicted, Amy reported. "They're following their normal patrol route." Jake felt his heart beating fast. This was it. After months of preparation, they were finally going to test Pete's weapon in real combat. If it worked, the Liberty would make history. If it failed, they would all die. "All hands to battle stations," Jake announced. "This is not a drill. We are about to engage enemy ships." The crew of the Liberty moved to their combat positions. Everyone knew their job. Ryan Blake prepared the weapons systems. Lisa Harper took her position at the navigation station. Amy Rodriguez monitored enemy movements. Pete Collins went to his quantum resonance weapon controls. "Enemy ships are 2 minutes away," Amy reported. Jake sat in his captain's chair and watched the tactical display. 3 red dots moved steadily toward their position. In 2 minutes, the forgotten warship would either prove herself or die trying. All. Stations report ready, Lisa said. Jake took a deep breath. Move us out from behind the asteroid. Let's show these Xanthari what an old human ship can do. The Liberty emerged from hiding and flew straight toward the 3 enemy destroyers. The battle that would change the war was about to begin. The 3 Xanthari destroyers spotted the USS Liberty immediately. Captain Jake Morrison watched on his screen as the enemy ships changed course to intercept them. The Xanthari were probably confused about why such an old human ship was in their territory. Enemy ships are powering up their weapons, Amy Rodriguez reported from her science station. They're moving into attack formation. Jake gripped the arms of his captain's chair. This was the moment that would decide everything. Either Pete Collins' quantum resonance weapon would work, or they would all die in the next few minutes. Ryan, target the lead destroyer, Jake ordered. Pete, is your weapon ready? Quantum resonance array is charging, Pete replied from his engineering station. Power levels rising. We'll be ready to fire in 30 seconds. The Xanthari ships came closer. Jake could see them clearly now on the main screen. They were sleek and deadly, with dark hulls and glowing blue engines. Each one was twice the size of the Liberty and carried weapons that could destroy an entire city. Incoming transmission from the lead Xanthari ship, Lisa Harper announced. Put it through, Jake said. A cold, alien voice spoke in perfect English. Human vessel, you have entered Xanthari space without permission. Surrender immediately, or be destroyed. Jake picked up the communication device. This is Captain Morrison of the USS Liberty. We don't surrender to anyone. There was a pause. Then the Xanthari commander spoke again, and Jake could hear amusement in his voice. The Liberty? We have heard of this ship. An old relic from the early days of human space travel. You are far from home, Captain. Your ship should be in a museum, not a battlefield. Maybe, Jake said. But this old museum piece is about to surprise you. The transmission ended. The Xanthari ships spread out and began their attack run. Energy beams lanced out from their weapons, striking the Liberty's shields. The old deflector systems held, but Jake could feel the ship shaking under the impact. Shields down to 80%, Ryan reported. We can't take much more of this. Quantum resonance array fully charged, Pete announced. Ready to fire on your command. Jake watched the tactical display. The lead Xanthari destroyer was coming. Straight at them, its shields glowing bright blue around its hull. Those shields had never been penetrated by human weapons. Every ship that had tried to fight the Xanthari had failed because of those shields. Lock onto target, Jake ordered. Target locked, Ryan confirmed. Jake took a deep breath. Everything depended on this moment. Fire! The Liberty's weapons fired at the same time as Pete's quantum resonance array. A brilliant beam of energy shot out from the old ship, hitting the Xanthari destroyer's shields. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then the impossible occurred. The Xanthari shields flickered and vanished completely. Direct hit! Ryan shouted. Their shields are down! The Liberty's conventional weapons struck the unprotected Xanthari hull. Explosions rippled across the enemy ship as the human weapons tore through armor that had never been breached before. The Xanthari destroyer began spinning out of control, trailing fire and debris. The bridge of the Liberty erupted in cheers. Pete's weapon had worked perfectly. They had done something that no human ship had ever accomplished before. They had defeated Xanthari's shields, but the battle was far from over. The other 2 Xanthari ships were still attacking, and they were very angry. Enemy ships are changing tactics, Amy reported. They're moving faster and firing everything they have at us. Energy beams from the remaining destroyers hammered the Liberty's shields. The old ship shook violently as her deflector systems struggled to hold up. Shields down to 40%, Ryan said. We need to finish this quickly. Jake pointed at the second destroyer. Target that one. Pete, can you fire again? Recharging now, Pete replied. 15 seconds. The Liberty turned toward the second Xanthari ship. More enemy fire struck their shields, and sparks flew from control panels around the bridge. The old ship was taking a beating, but she was still fighting. "Quantum resonance array ready," Pete announced. "Fire," Jake ordered. Again, the brilliant beam shot out from the Liberty. The second Zenthari destroyer's shields collapsed instantly. Ryan's weapons found their mark, and another enemy ship exploded in a ball of fire. The last Zenthari destroyer tried to retreat, but it was too late. Pete had already begun charging his weapon for a third shot. The enemy commander must have realized that his shields were useless against this strange human weapon. "The last ship is trying to run," Lisa reported. "Don't let it escape," Jake said. "If it gets away, it will report what happened here. The Zenthari will know we have a new weapon." The Liberty chased after the fleeing destroyer. Pete's quantum resonance array fired one more time, and the last enemy ship died in space like its companions. When the battle was over, the bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at their screens, hardly believing what had just happened. The USS Liberty, an old, forgotten warship that everyone thought was useless, had just destroyed 3 Zenthari destroyers in single combat. "All enemy ships destroyed," Amy reported quietly. "No survivors detected." Jake stood up from his captain's chair and walked over to Pete's station. The chief engineer was slumped in his chair, exhausted but smiling. "Pete," Jake said, "you just changed the war." Word of the Liberty's victory spread through human space faster than anyone thought possible. Fleet Command at first refused to believe the reports. An old patrol ship defeating 3 Zenthari destroyers? It seemed impossible. But when they saw the battle recordings and studied Pete's weapon design, everything changed. Orders came from the highest levels of human government. Every available ship was to be retrofitted with quantum resonance arrays immediately. Admiral Patricia Stone herself came aboard the Liberty to congratulate the crew. She stood on the bridge where Jake had made his desperate decision to fight. "Captain Morrison," she said, "your ship and crew have given humanity something we lost years ago. Hope." Jake looked around his bridge at the crew who had risked everything. "We just proved that sometimes the oldest weapons are the best ones. Admiral, within 6 months the war turned completely around. Human fleets equipped with quantum resonance weapons struck deep into Zenthari territory. The enemy's technological advantage disappeared overnight when their shields became useless. The Zenthari Empire, which had seemed unstoppable for 20 years, began to fall apart. World after world was liberated as human forces advanced. The Zenthari retreated to their home systems, no longer the galactic threat they had once been. Jake Morrison was promoted to admiral and given command of a new fleet. But he would always remember his time aboard the Liberty, the forgotten warship that everyone ignored until it brought down an empire. The old ship was retired with full honors and turned into a museum. Visitors from across human space came to see the vessel that had changed history. Children would stand on her bridge and hear the story of how an aging warship and her brave crew proved that being forgotten didn't mean being useless. The war was over, and humanity was free once again. Captain Steve Morgan stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the edge of known space. For 6 months, the Rim Patrol Fleet had been tracking signals from beyond the galactic boundary. Today, they would finally get answers. "Captain," reported his Vegan Tactical Officer Subcommander Thex-9, "long-range sensors detect a massive structure approaching from the void. It is larger than anything in our databases." Steve studied the display, showing a ship that dwarfed even the largest, human dreadnoughts. The vessel was completely black, absorbing all light that touched its surface. No energy signatures, no heat emissions, nothing that suggested it was powered by any known technology. "Communications? Try hailing them on all frequencies," Steve ordered. Lieutenant Amy Carter, who had transferred from Luna Base to join the Rim Patrol, worked her console frantically. "No response, Captain. But I am detecting something strange. The ship is transmitting, but not to us. It is sending data somewhere deeper in the void." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now serving as the fleet's chief science officer, analyzed the readings from her research ship. Steve, this technology is completely unknown. The hull material does not match any element in our periodic table, and the size suggests this ship could carry a population of millions. Steve felt the familiar chill that came before major discoveries. Elena, are we looking at a ship or a space station? I think we are looking at a city, Steve. A mobile city designed for deep space travel. On Earth, President Lisa Johnson convened an emergency meeting of the Global Security Council. The discovery of the unknown vessel had sent shockwaves through both human and alien governments. Dr. Patel, what do we know about this ship? President Johnson asked. Dr. Maya Patel consulted her datapad with worried eyes. Madam President, analysis of the vessel's trajectory suggests it has been traveling through intergalactic space for thousands of years, possibly much longer. Admiral Frank Morrison leaned forward. Are you saying this ship comes from outside our galaxy entirely? That appears to be the case, Admiral. And there is something else. The ship's course takes it directly toward the core worlds, where most of our liberated populations have settled. Senator Paul Adams stood up, his face pale. Madam President, this proves my point. By involving ourselves in galactic affairs, we have attracted the attention of forces beyond our understanding. We should immediately recall our fleets and prepare Earth's defenses. President Johnson considered this. Senator Adams, running away did not work with the hegemony. It will not work now. Our allies depend on us. Commander Jake Sullivan received new orders while patrolling near the former hegemony capital. His stealth destroyer was to investigate strange readings coming from the planet's surface. What he found changed everything they thought they knew about the recent war. Jake to Fleet Command, he transmitted on the secure channel. You need to see this immediately. In the ruins of the hegemony's central archives, Jake's team had discovered records that went back thousands of years. The hegemony had not been the original aggressors. They had been refugees. Dr. Kevin Wright studied the translated documents with growing alarm. Admiral Morrison, according to these records, the hegemony fled from something they called the Harvesters. Their entire military doctrine was based on preparing for the eventual return of this enemy. Dr. Wright, what exactly are these Harvesters? Morrison asked. A species that travels between galaxies, consuming entire civilizations for resources. The hegemony believed that by controlling our galaxy completely, they could build defenses strong enough to resist them. Morrison felt sick. Are you telling me that the hegemony's genocide was motivated by fear? It appears so, Admiral. They thought they were saving the galaxy by destroying its diversity and creating a unified military force. Captain Nina Brooks commanded the peacekeeping station orbiting the rebuilt Altarian homeworld when the black ship finally made contact. The communication came not through radio or any known method, but directly into the minds of every sentient being in the system. We are the collective. We have observed your conflict with the hegemony remnants. You have shown unexpected capability for a young species. Nina grabbed her head as the alien voice echoed in her thoughts. Around the bridge, her mixed species, crew struggled with the mental intrusion. We do not communicate through primitive electromagnetic signals. We speak directly to consciousness itself. Do not resist. It is futile. Elder Zen Mira, who was visiting the station, stepped forward despite the obvious pain the mental contact was causing her. Why have you come here? What do you want from us? We harvest galaxies when they reach technological maturity. Your galaxy has developed faster than our models predicted. The hegemony was supposed to slow your progress, not accelerate it through conflict. Nina forced herself to speak despite the pressure in her mind. You were controlling the hegemony? Control is incorrect. We guided their development to serve our purposes. They were to eliminate advanced civilizations and keep this galaxy in a primitive state until we were ready to harvest it. The mental voice paused, and Nina sensed something like surprise. The introduction of human aggression variables was not anticipated. Your species has disrupted thousands of years of careful planning. On Earth, the emergency session of the Global Assembly was interrupted when every human on the planet suddenly heard the alien voice in their minds. Panic spread through major cities as people realized they were facing something beyond their understanding. President Johnson maintained her composure despite the mental pressure. What do you mean by harvest? We consume the technological achievements of mature civilizations. Billions of species have contributed to our knowledge over millions of years. Your galaxy will provide resources for our next phase of expansion. Senator Adams collapsed in his chair. We are doomed. How do you fight something that can speak directly into your mind? But President Johnson felt anger rather than fear. You will find that humans do not surrender easily. We have fought impossible odds before. Your resistance is noted but irrelevant. However, your species presents an interesting anomaly. You have achieved technological advancement through conflict rather than cooperation. This suggests possibilities we had not considered. Admiral Kate Phillips coordinated the emergency response from her command ship near the galactic core. Every human and allied fleet was moving to intercept the approaching collective vessel, but their weapons seemed pitifully inadequate against something so massive. Admiral, reported her tactical officer, the alien ship is not just large. Our sensors suggest it contains technology from hundreds of different civilizations. They really have been harvesting galaxies. Kate studied the tactical display. How many ships do they have? Admiral, we think that is their entire fleet. One ship, but it is essentially a mobile planet. Commander Jake Sullivan's stealth destroyer was the first to get close enough for detailed scans. What he discovered was terrifying. The collective ship was not just a vessel. It was a graveyard of civilizations. Fleet Command, the hull of this ship is made from the compressed remains of thousands of different vessels. They literally build their ships from the wreckage of the species they destroy. Dr. Elena Rodriguez analyzed the data from her research vessel. Steve, I am detecting life signs inside that ship, millions of them, but they are not the original collective species. What do you mean? Steve asked. I think the collective assimilates the populations they conquer. Those life signs represent the enslaved survivors of every galaxy they have harvested. The revelation changed everything. This was not just about defending their galaxy. It was about freeing billions of enslaved beings from millions of years of captivity. President Johnson addressed the combined human and alien fleets through the mental link the collective had forced upon them. To all ships, all species, all free beings in this galaxy, we face an enemy that has destroyed countless civilizations before us. They expect us to surrender or be consumed like all the others. Her voice grew stronger, carrying the determination that had driven humanity through 3 centuries of isolation and preparation. But they made one critical error. They underestimated what happens when you threaten the family that humans have chosen to protect. Today we fight not just for our survival, but for the freedom of every enslaved soul trapped in that ship. As the human and allied fleets moved to intercept the collective vessel, the galaxy held its breath. The Deathworlders were about to face their greatest challenge yet. 2 weeks passed quietly on the USS Liberty. Captain Jake Morrison watched his crew go about their daily work. Nobody knew about Pete Collins's secret project except for Jake. Pete worked on his quantum resonance weapon every night after his regular shift ended. He told the other engineers he was fixing old systems and upgrading power circuits. Jake tried to act normal, but it was hard. Every time he walked past Engineering Deck 5, he wondered if Pete's crazy idea might actually work. The thought kept him awake at night. What if they really could build a weapon that went through Zenthari shields? What if the Liberty could help win the war? On Tuesday morning, everything changed. Amy Rodriguez was working at her science station when she suddenly sat up straight. Her face went pale as she stared at her computer screen. "Captain," she called out in a shaky voice. I'm getting a distress signal. Jake hurried over to her station. Where from? Research Station Delta 7, Amy said. It's about 6 hours away at maximum speed. But, Captain, that station is right on the edge of Zenthari space. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Research Station Delta 7 was one of the most remote human outposts in the galaxy. Scientists worked there to study alien technology and develop new weapons. If the station was sending a distress signal, something very bad had happened. What does the message say? Jake asked. Amy played the recording. A man's voice came through the speakers, filled with fear and panic. This is Dr. Carlos Martinez at Research Station Delta 7. We are under attack by Zenthari forces. Repeat, we are under attack. Our defenses are failing. We have made an important discovery about Zenthari shield technology. The data must not fall into enemy hands. Any human ship receiving this message, please respond. The message ended, and the bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at Jake, waiting for his orders. Lisa Harper walked over and stood next to him. Captain, she said quietly, Delta 7 is way outside our patrol area. If we go there, we'll be deep in enemy territory. The Liberty isn't built for that kind of mission. Jake knew she was right. The Liberty was an old patrol ship. She wasn't fast enough to outrun enemy fighters or strong enough to fight enemy warships. Going to Delta 7 would be extremely dangerous, maybe even suicide. But the message mentioned a discovery about Zenthari shields. That was exactly what Pete needed for his weapon project. If the scientists at Delta 7 had learned something important about how Zenthari shields worked, it might be the missing piece of Pete's puzzle. Amy, Jake said, can you tell if the station is still there? Amy worked at her computer for several minutes. I'm detecting very weak life support signals. Someone is still alive, but barely. I also see debris in orbit around the station. It looks like there was a big battle. Jake made his decision. Lisa, set course for Research Station Delta 7. Maximum speed. Lisa looked surprised. Sir, are you sure? We'll be completely on our own out there. No backup, no support. I'm sure, Jake said. If those scientists discovered something important about Zenthari shields, we need to get that information before the enemy does. The Liberty changed course and headed toward the research station. As they traveled through space, Jake called a meeting with his senior officers. He gathered them in the small conference room next to the bridge. I want everyone to understand what we're doing, Jake said. This is not a normal rescue mission. We're going into enemy territory to recover something that might help us win the war. Ryan Blake, the ship's tactical officer, leaned forward. Captain, what kind of discovery could be that important? Jake decided to tell them the truth, at least part of it. The scientists at Delta 7 were studying Zenthari shield technology. If they found a weakness, a way to get through those shields, it could change everything. Dr. Susan Wells, the ship's medical officer, looked worried. How many people are we talking about rescuing? The research station normally has about 20 scientists and support staff, Amy said. But after the attack, I don't know how many are still alive. Pete Collins had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke up. Captain, if these scientists really found something about Zenthari shields, we need to get that data no matter. What? It could be the key to everything? Jake nodded. Pete was thinking the same thing he was. The quantum resonance weapon was only part of the puzzle. They needed to understand exactly how Zenthari shields worked before they could build a weapon to defeat them. How long until we reach the station? Jake asked. 4 hours and 30 minutes, Lisa said. Good. I want everyone to prepare for a combat situation. The Zenthari might have left guards at the station. Ryan, check all our weapons systems. Susan, get the medical bay ready for wounded people. Amy, scan everything when we get close. I want to know exactly what we're flying into. The meeting ended, and everyone went back to their stations. Jake stayed in the conference room for a few minutes, thinking about what they were about to do. The Liberty had been ignored and forgotten for years. Now they were about to attempt the most dangerous mission of the war. A few hours later, research. Station Delta 7 appeared on their screens. The station looked terrible. Parts of it were blown apart and floating in space. Scorch marks covered the hull where enemy weapons had hit it. Several small ships floated nearby, also destroyed. "I'm detecting life signs," Amy reported. "Very weak, but definitely human. It looks like there are survivors in the central section of the station." "Any sign of Xanthari ships?" Jake asked. Amy scanned the area carefully. "Nothing on sensors. I think they're gone." Jake felt relieved, but he stayed cautious. "Ryan, keep our weapons ready just in case. Lisa, take us in, slow and careful." The Liberty moved closer to the damaged station. As they got nearer, they could see the full extent of the destruction. The Xanthari had hit the station hard with their powerful weapons. Most of the outer sections were completely destroyed. "Captain," Amy said suddenly, "I'm getting a weak transmission from the station." "Put it through," Jake ordered. A tired voice came through the speakers. "Unknown ship, this is Dr. Martinez. Please respond. We have wounded people here and critical data that must be protected." Jake picked up the communications microphone. "Dr. Martinez, this is Captain Morrison of the USS Liberty. We received your distress call. We're here to help." There was a long pause. Then Dr. Martinez's voice came back, filled with relief and hope. "Captain Morrison, thank God you came. We didn't think anyone would risk coming this far into enemy space. We have something very important to show you." Captain Jake Morrison stood in the shuttle bay of the USS Liberty, watching his away team get ready. He had chosen 6 people for the rescue mission. Lisa Harper would lead the team. Ryan Blake would handle security. Dr. Susan Wells would take care of the wounded. 3 engineers would help move equipment and people. "Remember," Jake told them, "we get in fast. Grab the survivors and their data, then get out. Don't take any chances. If we see Xanthari ships coming back, we leave immediately." Lisa checked her equipment one more time. "Understood, Captain. How long do we have?" 1 hour maximum," Jake said. "Any longer than that and we risk getting trapped." The shuttle launched from the Liberty and flew toward the damaged research station. As they got closer, the destruction looked even worse. Huge holes had been blown in the station's hull. Debris floated everywhere in space around them. Lisa piloted the shuttle through the wreckage carefully. "There," she said, pointing at an airlock that was still intact. "That's our way in." The shuttle docked with the station with a soft thump. Lisa and her team put on their helmets and checked their air supplies. The station might not have good air to breathe anymore. They opened the airlock and stepped inside. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls. The corridors were filled with smoke and the smell of burned electronics. Some sections had no gravity, so they had to float through them carefully. "Dr. Martinez," Lisa called into her radio. "We're inside the station. Where are you?" "Section C, Level 3, came the reply. "Follow the main corridor and turn left at the second junction. Be careful. Some areas are damaged and dangerous." The rescue team moved through the station quickly but carefully. They passed rooms that were completely destroyed. In other places, they had to climb over fallen beams and broken equipment. The Xanthari attack had been brutal and thorough. They found Dr. Martinez and 8 other survivors in what used to be the main laboratory. The scientists looked tired and scared. 3 of them were injured and lying on makeshift beds. Dr. Wells immediately went to help the wounded people. Dr. Martinez was a thin man with gray hair and worried eyes. He grabbed Lisa's arm when she approached him. "Thank God you came," he said. "We didn't think anyone would risk coming this far out." "We got your message about a discovery," Lisa said. "What did you find?" Dr. Martinez's eyes lit up with excitement, even though he was exhausted. "We found the key to everything. We know how Xanthari shields work, and more importantly, we know how to defeat them." He led Lisa to a computer terminal that was still working. The screen showed complex diagrams and numbers that Lisa didn't understand. "For 20 years, we've been trying to punch through Xanthari shields with brute force," Dr. Martinez explained. Bigger weapons, more power, better technology. But that's not the answer. What is the answer? Lisa asked. Frequency, Dr. Martinez said simply. Xanthari shields work by creating a barrier that stops energy at certain frequencies. But they can't stop everything. There are specific frequencies that pass right through their shields like they don't exist. Lisa felt her heart beat faster. This was exactly what Pete Collins needed for his quantum resonance weapon. Do you have the exact frequencies? Dr. Martinez nodded and pointed at his computer. All the data is right here. Frequency ranges, power requirements, technical specifications, everything you need to build a weapon that can defeat Xanthari shields. Dr. Wells looked up from treating the wounded. Captain Morrison is going to want to see this immediately. One of the other scientists, a young woman named Dr. Sarah Kim, joined the conversation. There's more, she said. We also discovered why human shields don't work against Xanthari weapons. They use a completely different technology than we thought. If we understand how they work, we can build better defenses too. Lisa realized they had found something that could change the entire war. But first, they had to get everyone safely back to the Liberty. How long will it take to download all the data? 10 minutes, Dr. Martinez said. He started copying files to a portable storage device. While they waited, Ryan Blake checked the security sensors. Still no sign of enemy ships, he reported. But we should hurry. The Xanthari might come back to check on this place. Dr. Wells finished treating the wounded. Survivors. 2 of them are badly hurt, she said. They need surgery as soon as we get back to the ship, but they should survive if we move them carefully. The data download finished, and Dr. Martinez handed the storage device to Lisa. This contains everything. We learned about Xanthari technology. Guard it with your life. If this information reaches the human fleet, we can turn this war around. The rescue team helped the survivors move through the damaged station back to their shuttle. It took longer than expected because of the injured people, but everyone made it safely. They loaded the survivors into the shuttle and prepared to leave as their shuttle flew back toward the Liberty. Lisa contacted Captain Morrison. Captain, we have all 9 survivors and the data. But sir, what they discovered is incredible. This could change everything. Understood, Jake replied. Get back here quickly. I want to see that data immediately. The shuttle docked with the Liberty, and Dr. Wells rushed the injured survivors to the medical bay. Dr. Martinez and the other scientists were taken to guest quarters to rest. Lisa brought the data storage device directly to Captain Morrison on the bridge. Jake plugged the device into Amy Rodriguez's science station. Amy's eyes went wide as she read through the files. Captain, this is amazing. They figured out exactly how Xanthari shields work. The mathematics are complex, but the basic idea is simple. Show me, Jake said. Amy brought up a diagram on her screen. Xanthari shields create an energy field that blocks most frequencies of weapons fire. But there are gaps in their coverage, specific frequencies that pass right through without being stopped. Jake felt excitement building in his chest. Can we use this information? Absolutely, Amy said. If we can modify our weapons to fire at these exact frequencies, Xanthari shields will be useless against us. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Amy, take this data down to Pete Collins immediately. Tell him his quantum resonance. Project just became our top priority. Pete Collins was still working in Engineering Deck 5 when Amy arrived with the data. She explained what the scientists had discovered and showed him the technical files. Pete's face broke into a huge smile as he read through the information. This is it, Pete said with excitement. This is exactly what I needed. With these frequency specifications, I can calibrate the quantum resonance array perfectly. We can build a weapon that will go through Xanthari shields like they're made of paper. How long will it take? Amy asked. Pete looked at his partially built machine and thought, carefully. With this data, maybe 2 weeks instead of 2 months. But Amy, I need to warn everyone. Once we test this weapon, there's no going back. The Zenthari will know we have something new. They'll send everything they have to destroy us." Amy nodded. "I'll tell the captain. But Pete, if this works, the Liberty might be the ship that saves humanity." Pete went back to work with new energy and hope. The forgotten warship was about to become the most important vessel in human space.